Try again, yeah.
Hi everyone, we are Quoala Code. We take the risk out of deploying software. Our company is based on my research as a PhD student, and my advisors more than a decade of experience, and our talented developer Seth. The first bug in a computer was a moth stuck in a circuit. This was the Mark II, it was the size of a warehouse, and it had a stunningly small amount of compute power. Today, computers have changed drastically. They've gotten much, much smaller, and now over 50% of the personal computers out there are Android phones or watches. As a developer of software, when you put this out there, your software out there, you are responsible for making it work properly on all these devices under all these different circumstances. And that is a big task. If you get this wrong, it's bad. The App Store tracks reviews. Users can explain to everybody else who's about to download your product exactly what went wrong. And these are real ratings from a company that we talked to. They deployed a bug and their users were seriously annoyed. To make matters worse, Google actually filters the search results based on the reliability of your application. And it's pretty common to see your download rates plummet when there's a problem. At Quoala Code, what we do is we leverage the existing process of quality assurance. Quality assurance, you have a bunch of people using your application trying to find that one configuration, that one device that exposes a crash. What we do is we find the near misses and the configurations that can expose those as real bugs. Things like specific devices, slow connections, peripherals. Your company gets all of its money from satisfied users. And those of you who are running software businesses know that the vast majority of that money goes to your developers. Right now, the process of deploying software relies on the expertise of your developers and them very carefully crafting the software to know that it's going to based on their years of experience, to know that it's going to work. This is a huge time sink, worrying about defects. This company is built upon research I did as a PhD student, where our prototype found a bug in the O'Reilly book, Learning Android. This is a bug that only manifests under specific circumstances that the user would see, but probably not in testing. So you can download their code right now and crash it. The Android app market is huge. There are 3.8 million Android applications on the market right now. Of those, about 16% are in the US, 50% of them are developed from scratch, and about 35% of them have 2 updates per year, meaning that they're sizable, maintained apps. This means that we have 107,000 apps that we can target for our beachhead market. If we can get just $200 a month from each of these, that's $257 million. That's a upper bound of $257 million a year. To go to market, we can use a time-honored strategy that has been used by Atlassian and GitHub to offer our product to open source projects. These are the developers who are the influential in the communities, who expose their code, who show their code to the world, and other developers learn from. We can also reach out to struggling companies on the App Store. Since this is public information, we might as well use it. So, let Quoala Code help you build confidence in your software before it's running on all these devices.
Is that time?
Yep.
Okay.
Lane, what does Quoala Code do?
They help developers find bugs before they put their app on the App Store, pretty much.
Okay. Jordan, how do they do it?
How do they find the bugs?
Yeah, let's.
They were going to use some type of software to scan basically the program through their knowledge of these hidden bugs, be able to like basically root them out.
Okay. Daniel, how much does it cost?
Too much. $200 per company. Per month.
So I think the bones of what you're talking about are there, right? People are tracking. That sounds about right to me. Does that sound about right to you and Seth?
Mm-hmm. I think I missed the how we do it.
The how we do it would be a great answer for us.
Well, we have a lot of how we do it, so we just need to choose which one is the problem.
What was your ask?
Oh, I think I forgot to put it in there, but the intended ask is, are you a developer who is deploying to a lot of devices? We want to talk to you about your development process and help you find bugs.
First off, I know there's only a few of you from the cohort in here, but I'll echo some things. Pitching is hard, and if you're not struggling right now, you should be. Because you're still figuring out a lot about your businesses, a lot about your companies. So I always think it's great to go with what you know. And to that end, you have some really good touch points in here. You're going through it somewhat robotically, which is fine. That's part of working through pitch practice. You should all be pretty excited about certain things so that you know that, does anybody here run or train, do intervals, anything like that?
Aerobically.
You're a swimmer, right, Lane? Okay. So the first time you swim a lap, that's not much to celebrate. The first time you, what's more than swimming a lap? Right. So there are these different milestones that you want to try to hit as you develop kind of your cadence and your rhythm. Pitching is the same way. You want to be able to know that you're getting to certain points. So you have your Heisenberg, you have your high point of, if you're getting bad reviews, that's a bad thing, right? And so you want to think about your slide deck, you want to think about your pitch as getting to certain points where you can kind of be like, ooh, I made my time, and I made my milestone, and I'm halfway through the marathon. And I think that'll help you in your process of kind of working through some of the things that you're saying, but you're not really feeling, because you're sort of like, I gotta say this, as opposed to kind of thinking about the cadence and the rhythm that'll get you there. So we can walk through your slide deck and kind of underscore some of those points. Again, I think your bones are there. You're kind of getting people through a very complex process, which is great, and they're able to understand why it's important. You started with your team deck, and you're the second set of founders to do that. I'm curious why.
Because
Your team slide, not your team deck.
the team, I think, is one of those. I think the team is kind of the strong point that we have right now. The other reason is that Kyle recommended it to me for some reason, and I thought that was a good idea, I guess.
So that's come across the two teams. I've never seen a pitch lead off with team before.
Okay.
And I'll chat with Kyle about where this is important based on his
Maybe
recommendation.
I should go ask him why he thought I should do it.
Well, it's come up twice, so I'm not putting it on you. I look at it like, hey, you look like somebody I want to meet. Can I buy you a drink? Here's a picture of my family.
Yeah,
It's like, so what?
yeah, it was really awkward for me.
And you saw it happen with Edboard as well.
Yeah,
There's something really halting, and it feels super inauthentic because you're up there alone trying to introduce us to 3 or 4 other people that we may never see. So I'll ask Kyle, I was just curious, because you're the second team to do it today, and as a leadoff, it's really
Might have just
disjointed.
misunderstood what he was suggesting, so.
You're not alone in it. I just wanted to understand if it's coming from, some point. I appreciate, these guys are great, Seth especially, because he's gonna be great. But I think what's more interesting to me, and I know we talked about this, go to your next slide. All right, so you're talking about the first computer bug, and you're giving an example of that computer. If this is the actual computer, that's great. I understand you're researched, you're validated, you want to show things. The most interesting part of that slide is the call out of the bug and the note that says, bug found in system. Everything else on here is irrelevant, way too much white space, because we can't see anything and we're trying to piece together two pieces of the puzzle. The essence of what you're talking about is a picture of that bug with the note that says,
First actual case.
moth in relay.
Yes.
First actual case of bug being found. Boom. That's relevant. This is pretty, but I don't really care about the computer. What I care about was this was found in the relay. If you could actually show somebody pulling the relay out with the bug, that's relevant. But this is the hook to your story. Everything else up there is just wasted space.
Do you have good examples of really well-structured and pretty pitch decks that we can copy ideas from?
Sure. Techstars demo day, Catalyze CU demo days, the last handful of, a good pitch deck is really going to be representative of you.
Okay.
So what works for Boulder Sun doesn't necessarily work for, but going through it and kind of seeing what kind of fits, happy to help with that. Go ahead, Destiny.
Couple of different things. As far as the team deck goes, I just wanted to point out that me personally, I feel like that you could potentially, and this goes for any team, be setting yourself up for failure in a way in such that you're telling me first who you are, and you're trying to say, oh, we're so credible, we know this, we know that, we can do this, we can do that, and then if your pitch fails, now I'm gonna be I feel like you just discredited yourselves as people, because if you gave a pitch and it didn't land well to me, I'm gonna now think that you guys are not credible to do the job you're saying that you're doing. But if you give a really great pitch and then at the end you're like, this is who's behind it, to me I'm like, yeah, I feel good about that. But starting in the beginning for me feels a little risky to say, oh, this is who we are and this is why we're great. But then if your pitch doesn't deliver, you kind of let me down. And in terms looks bad on you. That was the first thing. What was the second thing that I was going to say? Yeah, where am I?
I was saying that it's just, if you, what they were saying with the bug, if you cut that out, made it bigger, and then explained it, for me, it's a little bit of reciprocity, because I didn't know that that's what that meant, that it was literally a bug in the first computer, and that's why we now call computer bugs. That's cool. I leave with something I didn't know.
Yeah, agreed.
You're going to hook a lot of the audience because they're going to be like, I had no idea. You're going to have people come up to you at demo day, probably my grandma being like, I didn't know that's what bugs meant. You guys are really smart.
Remember when Nicole showed the Kepler?
What's that?
When Nicole showed the Kepler pitch?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, the Kepler pitch was quite good.
Yeah, so it kind of reminds me of you have that same opportunity here to make people feel smarter.
Bring us into your world a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do remember the second thing I was going to bring up. One, for me, it's a little too techie jargon. As a person who's not in the tech world, I feel like I'd like to see you add a bit more personal ties to it, and in a way that I think to do that, talk about, I don't know if you did or not, I don't remember seeing it, but how many apps fail right off the bat from a bug screwing them up and then getting terrible reviews and they just can't recover from it. Something like that I think would be awesome to know, how many apps fail because of this Heisenberg bug that you speak of, and really hitting home with that. And again, trying to, I don't want to tell you to dumb your entire pitch down, but just put some things in that us normal folks will understand, so I don't feel like I'm listening to you and stabbing myself in the head trying to figure out what you're talking about, because I don't know language that well.
Please
So
don't
just
stab
a
yourself
couple
in the
of
head.
parts to put in there that really can connect with us normal folks. Would be cool.
Daniel?
So, So I know why you started with the team slide or kind of that presentation thing there, and it's our fault in the academic world because, well, you're a PhD student, right? So like for 18 years, we've been teaching you all how to present to class or present to groups or present things like that, and it's all wrong when it comes to pitching. So it's our fault for setting you up the wrong way and then asking you to do it completely differently. But we're gonna ask you to do it completely differently. There's a really, really fascinating story in here, both for non-technical people and for technical people. I am your demographic, right? I mean, I am the nerd that's totally into the
And you're also the
jargon
person who
stuff.
said it's too expensive.
Well, so I do think it's too expensive. We can talk about that another time. But if I weren't here, if I was just watching this pitch somewhere else, I would have checked out right away because I don't do Android development. The company I work with doesn't do Android development. Android's kind of an afterthought for us. We don't really care about it too much. Your whole pitch is about Android. But Android's just your beachhead. I mean, I know that because we talked about it. You're starting with Android because it's easy and accessible and encapsulated, and you have a lot of good reasons for starting with it. But you're not an Android troubleshooting tool, you're a software troubleshooting tool. So I think you box yourself into a corner right at the beginning that you don't need to. So I would lose everything about Android except when you talk about traction. We're going to start with open source Android projects by offering it free to them. And then we're going to help these companies by doing such and such. I love the little bug thing. Hey, this is the first ever computer running in this computer. This computer, you know, the entire operating system of this computer was 7,000 lines of code or whatever. You figure out what that number is. Your typical Android watch has 16,000 lines of code, 2.3 billion lines.
Oh no, it's way more than that. It's
So my point is how many lines? So scope. So it's like, hey, software these days depends on millions of lines of code, and these bugs are hidden in there. So this is a bug, and it's bad. There are lots of bugs. Software is very complicated. How much do software bugs cost?
Could I try a slightly different catch on you?
Sure.
This moth caught in a relay panel was the first example of a computer bug. However, computers have gotten significantly more complicated since then. The source code for this watch is now contains more information than the genome of that moth.
That is a cool thing to say. Hey, my watch, not only thousands of times more complicated than this computer, it's thousands of times more complicated than the genome of the moth itself.
Let me jump on that too.
This watch is like that too.
Back when this was the scale of a computer, bugs were actually able to be found. And in fact, this is the first bug, yada, yada, yada. But now, something like my smartwatch has so many lines of code that there's more, lines of code than whatever you're compared with the genome of the moth. Much more difficult to find something that we can't actually see.
Yeah.
You create that relatability for people who are like, oh, size, scale, complexity, gotcha. And then you move into the path of telling the story of why that's valuable.
And without going into like deep detail, the whole idea of the Heisenberg, right, is that not all bugs appear every time you test them. Sometimes there's a degree of uncertainty. If you're going to say Heisenberg, you have to get uncertainty beforehand so people get the joke. But you say, software testing is hard because bugs don't always happen exactly the same time, such and such. So my question, how expensive of a problem is this? I Googled it really quickly. $59.5 billion a year in the US alone. Software bugs cost that. So when you're talking about scope, right in the beginning, why is this a problem? Here's a bug. Things have gotten much more complicated. Bugs are much harder to find, and this costs US businesses $60 billion a year. All of a sudden, even if I'm not a software developer, I'm like, that's a lot of money to lose. That's a big problem. That's a big scope problem. So I think if you set that scope up right away and tell this really interesting story around that, I think it'll be really powerful. One last thought. Don't ever, this is for everyone, don't ever say, if we could get just this much of the market, or if we could get just this, it's immediately disqualifying. As soon as I hear that from somebody, I check out. Because, yeah, if I could get just $1 from every person on Earth, I would have $7 billion. My life would be really good. But I've given you no reason to believe why I could get $1 from every person on Earth. So you set the scope of the market, you let us guess how much of it you can get. If you say it's a $60 billion problem, and then you don't give me a number, I'm just gonna be like, huh, well, if they get a little bit of traction, if they do this for like, I'll work through the business model in my head. But that, I just always, that if we can get X percentage thing is a deal breaker.
I agree with that mall thing, by the way. I think that would be a really cool freaking thing to put in there, like, it's splitting these two slides up even. What computer is this? Is this the first, it's not the first computer ever, right? So what computer is it?
This is the first computer that a programming language was written for.
That a what?
This was the first computer that had a high-level programming language.
Okay, so if that computer is specific enough to that story, I would maybe show that first. But I think showing this first bug thing and then talking about like what Tim was saying earlier, like what's the output of that in comparison to your watch, our computers, our phones, like the most used technology today,
So
to show where we start, where we are now. The first bug that was ever found in this computer was literally a bug. Like most of us aren't gonna know that. And then afterwards you can go, not only was the first computer bug an actual bug, our computers are 10 billion times more complicated, but now the bug is invisible. Show that bug, then show the bug disappear and go, where's your bug? You know what I'm saying? Like that type of imagery and that story is gonna make you go, wow, holy shit. And then you jump over there and say, business, it costs, business is $60 billion a year to find this invisible bug. Like that's really